Ladies and gentlemen, in some ways, boys and girls, I've been preparing for this panel my entire life. Fate and destiny has brought us here together. There is no other line I could use to introduce this gentleman, but there are few who deny at what he does, he is the best. For his talents are renowned far and wide. He is a 4-time Academy Award nominee. He's composed scores for over 140 movies and TV series, as well as many other things. He's in one of the most iconic bands of the 80s. He has done so much, and we're going to try and pack it all in to the 45 minutes that we have. Ladies and gentlemen of Fan Expo Dallas, please give a huge Texas-sized welcome to Mr. Duty Elfman.
Thank you.
This is marks the distinction of being Danny's first convention ever. Woo! In all the weird worlds you've played in, this is a weird one, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is quite unique.
Yeah.
A lot of people in a really big room.
Yeah. Also, happy birthday. You just had a birthday.
Woo!
What's kind of your secret? Because you look amazing.
Baby blood.
Baby blood. Perfect.
Everything that works.
The thing about you, as I was going back over your career, is you've not only composed so many themes for so many movies and TV series and beyond that represent so much of the properties that are right outside, but those themes have really become themes of our lives. I mean, this is music that goes beyond just the screen and into our lives. Are you able to at all kind of wrap your head around that in any way?
No, it's always, I never really know what to make of that. I mean, each of these films, when they came along, it was just kind of like, oh, that's cool, you know. Tim's doing Batman, really? I said, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
But sure. And then, he sent me a bunch of Dark Knight comics, and I just kind of like got pulled in. And then suddenly Sam calls and he goes, yeah, I'm gonna do Spider-Man. I go, really? And so it's cool, let's do it.
Yeah.
But, I didn't really think about it other than it was fun because, I grew up on a lot of comics as a kid. So as a kid, I didn't read the Batman stuff, but I did read Spider-Man, because in the 60s,
Of course. Yeah.
it was really kind of a big thing. Fantastic Four and Spider-Man were the ones I remember most from my childhood.
Yeah.
But it's just, for me, they're just fun worlds to be in.
Of course, yeah.
And so I'm just happy to be in any kind of alternate reality, whether it's, because there's such inventive minds, Raimi and Burton and people like that. And it's just, they're just great worlds to be part of.
Yeah, I want to talk about both Tim and Sam. You and Tim have worked together now, I counted, one by one. I think Beetlejuice marks your 20th score.
I guess, I haven't counted, but it's been 38 years, probably 20, yeah.
To me, you and Tim's collaboration and friendship is like the Beatles to me, or the Beetlejuices, I guess you would say. The fact that these two kind of lovable weirdos found each other and can make what you can make in a way that only you can, it's kind of incredible. It feels,
Well, it was a lucky break, I got called in for a meeting on Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and at first I thought, oh, it's because they're looking for a song. I just assumed, oh, you want a song?
Yeah.
Because I was in a band. And it didn't even occur to me to score films. I wasn't trying.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was possible. And Tim was just kind of like, yeah, I just think you could do a film score. And Paul Rubens, God bless him, he had seen years earlier, way before I became a composer, I did a late night cult film for my brother called Forbidden Zone.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Paul Rubens, who was Pee Wee Herman, happened to be a fan of the music. And he made a note, I'm gonna write his name down if I ever do a film. And sure enough, 7 years later, 6, 7, I'm guessing, he did a film, and he remembered. He found a piece of paper that he'd written my name down on, and he mentioned it to Tim, and Tim was like, oh, I go see their bands at the Whiskey A Go-Go, his band. So they decided just to call me in for a meeting, and I just met with Tim, and it was kind of weird because we both picked up very quickly that we both grew up in Los Angeles, and we were both monster kids, as what we were called later in this thing forward that Guillermo del Toro did, called us the Monster Kids. And when I met Tim, his idol was Vincent Price, and mine was Peter Lorre. I didn't realize that would define our relationship for the next 40 years. Because Vincent Price was often the torturer of Peter Lorre.
Right,
Peter Lorre was always the one who was being tortured by life or crawling hands out to kill him or whatever else was trying to get him. So it was just a lucky break. We just hit it off. He told me about the movie, showed me a little bit of it. I went home, I wrote a little piece of music and sent it to him on a cassette tape. I had a 4-track tape recorder, and that became the main titles, The Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Because you mentioned Paul, to me that time in LA in the 80s, I mean, you had you and of course your band Oingo Boingo, which really occupied its own space. And of course before that, the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo, which I think Oingo Boingo unfairly gets lumped into a new wave category, and I think they unfairly get lumped into a new wave category where they're really not new wave, they're really their own thing.
Look, nobody ever knew what we were,
right?
And we didn't know what we were, and we didn't really care. So we knew that we weren't a punk band, we weren't a new wave band, It's like, so what are we? Well, who knows? And of course the record labels were always perplexed, like, how do we market this band? What are they?
But, so you have you and Oingo Boingo, and you individually when you started to develop your own work, and then you have Paul Rubens, and then you have people like Weird Al Yankovic, and you have Tim Burton, all kind of converging at the same time. These kind of monster kids, or people who really grew up on 50s B movies and monster movies, and we're kind of throwing back to kind of a vaudevillian style of weird theater and comedy. What do you think can you kind of define what that was at all, or it just felt like this convergence of like-minded people and artists?
I mean, it's hard to say. I think everybody you mentioned is going to have a different story of things that inspired them. Tim was much more art-based in that he was a really good illustrator. Right from the beginning, his drawings were really wonderful. And he had done 2 great animated short films before Pee-wee's Big Adventure. So I didn't know who he was, but they sent me a copy of Frankenweenie, the original animation that he did, and Vincent, I think he did inspired by Vincent Price. And I could see that he was really talented. I knew who Paul was because I'd actually seen Paul Rubens perform with the Groundlings, which was an improv group in LA before. Well, it's when he first developed his Pee-wee character. So
with Cassandra Peterson, who became Elvira.
But I used to go see them, and Pee-wee was one of his characters. He would do 3 or 4. And the Pee Wee Herman character always brought the house down. So later it was like, oh yeah, I know who Pee Wee Herman is. Sam Raimi had his own influences. Sam, they were all different kind of horror films. Tim loved the Hammer horrors, Roger Corman, the English, things with Christopher Lee and stuff like that. And Sam was more into kind of bloody. Exactly, probably, and so everybody had their own thing, but we did come out of an era where the one thing we had in common is, I went to movies every weekend of my life as a kid, because that's what you did in the 60s. You just walk down the street to the local movie theater, and they had 2 new movies every weekend, which was kind of hard to imagine now, the idea of a theater changing their movies every week. And I would say it was 80% horror films, horror sci-fi.
Right.
And occasionally there'd be like a musical or like a Disney musical. We'd all boycott the theater.
The irony that you ran away from the Disney musical.
Exactly. And came back. But at that moment in my life, it's like, no, there's no aliens, mutants, vampires, or monsters. I'm not interested. Why else would I go to a movie? What's the point?
Because you mentioned Sam, I'd love to talk about your long-running collaboration and friendship. You worked on I think 7 projects together, starting with Darkman in 1990, which is certainly an underrated superhero movie before, it was kind of post Tim Burton's Batman, which you of course worked on. But your iconic score for Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2 with Sam, I mean, even just looking back over your career, the amount of superhero movies that you've done scores for, of course, Batman, Spider-Man, Hulk, Hellboy 2, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Justice League, Doctor Strange, but every step of the way that's been at a different point of that genre really emerging. So kind of going all the way back to Batman and Spider-Man, what was kind of developing the sound of a superhero movie?
Well, I mean, there wasn't a sound. You know, when I did Batman, there was nothing to go on. The only superhero score that we were aware of was Superman.
Yeah.
And so we had a conversation. That was the one thing we knew we didn't want it to feel like Superman, which was its own thing. And so what do we want it to sound like? No idea.
Yeah.
Now, in hindsight, I realized that was the beauty of the moment. And it was like that with all of Tim's early films. No temp score. Nobody knew what would be the sound of Edward Scissorhands, Batman, Beetlejuice, Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I didn't know. Tim didn't know. Nobody knew. There was no model to look at.
You were creating new worlds.
And so now I feel like I was incredibly lucky to have been there during that. With Sam, with Darkman, it was the same thing. We didn't know what it should be, other than it was melodramatic and emotional, and so find something that has kind of longing and whatnot. But for Batman, it was just open season.
Yeah, I know, as I said, Darkman is one of my favorite scores of yours, and I think very underrated. I've heard people ask you, can you pick a favorite score, and you said it's like picking a favorite kid. Is there a score, though, that you feel is maybe underrated of yours that, you've done so many iconic scores, but...
I mean, it's hard to say. I've done, 110 films, and probably 70 of those most people have never seen. So they're all, kind of unknown to a certain extent. Any composer, or at least most composers, for every 5 films you do, you're lucky if 2 of them are successful. And 3, just no. People, they're out for a minute and they're gone. So the thing I'm most grateful for is that what I felt was the most underrated movie I worked on when it came out was Nightmare Before Christmas. Because it came out, and nobody understood what it was. They didn't know how to market it. Understandably, Disney had no idea what it was. And it came out and was gone in a minute, and that kind of broke my heart. Because usually I'm working on a movie for 3 months, and I was on Nightmare for 2 years. And it just came and went so quickly, and I wished that more people, but then years later I'm with Tim Burton in Tokyo for the opening of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and we see that there's Jack and Sally merchandise everywhere, and Tim was like, I've never seen this stuff before. and there was a Nightmare Before Christmas theme club, nightclub in Tokyo. And I think after that, I don't know if Tim went to Disney or what, but they started, it's a decade later, and they're still interested in it, and now we understand it. And then they started putting energy into it. So it's so rare for a film to get a second life.
Absolutely.
Almost never. I mean, you can count them on one hand. Wizard of Oz, maybe Donnie Darko.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Pardon me?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. Coen Brothers film, which with Jeff
Big Lebowski, yeah.
Big Lebowski,
yeah.
kind of. So it's so rare. So for anything that I've ever worked on, to be able to get a second life,
absolutely,
Nightmare would have been the one I would have prayed for, and did. So I consider that to be a real blessing. And if you had ever told me that in 25 years you're going to be on stage at the Hollywood Bowl performing live Nightmare Before Christmas or something like that, I'd have gone, you're insane. And in fact, when they came up with the idea for that, they said, oh, we're thinking of a couple nights at the Hollywood Bowl, and I suggested a 1,200-seat theater in Los Angeles as an alternative, and I said, I think that would be more appropriate. And they go, I think it's a little bigger than you think it is.
Yeah.
And I was really, really shocked.
That you sold out the Hollywood Bowl, which is what, 17,000 seats?
Yeah, now I've been there 11 times already, and so it's just blows my mind.
And you've done the show with the original cast. You've done it with Billie Eilish as Sally. You've evolved your show and kind of made it this mixed media variety show at Coachella and
well, that whole thing, that's a whole other world.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about the movie
and
stuff. And so, but you asked me the one that was underrated that I wish would be known, ended up being known.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful for that. So I thank you, all of you here. Because it really was all from the fans.
Yeah.
It was fans just going, no, we're really into this. And the great surprise of it for me is that when it came out, I did a press junket, and every journalist asked me the same question. They said, this movie's not for kids. It's too scary for kids. And I go, it isn't. They go, well, we've heard it's too scary for kids. We heard Santa Claus gets tortured. And I go, he's not tortured. He's just uncomfortable and inconvenienced. And I would say to them, I said, are your kids afraid to go out on Halloween? And they go, no, they love it. And they go, then this movie's not too scary for them. So now, decades later, whenever I do the shows, there's all these kids keep coming generation after, and that feels so good because it's what I felt from the beginning, that they were wrong.
Well, and that was a project where you had scored films, but here you're writing a musical and you're singing as a character, and it's a very personal character that represents, I think, a lot of who you are.
It was because when I was writing the songs for Jack, I was writing Jack. Of course, I was writing Tim's storyline, but I was also writing from my own point of view of someone who was looking for something else. And I was at a point where I was in the band, but I didn't want to be in a band anymore. And I understood Jack, and I put myself into his psyche. So it was very personal for me.
It's, to your point about the kind of cult film, it still occupies its own space in that it feels not only a part of the fabric of pop culture, but it feels a part of people's lives. It's a part of people's traditions. I mean, Nightmare Before Christmas is literally half of a Hot Topic, and then the other half is a Spirit Halloween. But it's people have worked it into their weddings. They've gotten tattoos. They've mentioned it in their vows. It's been their first dances. It's how they mourn people. It's really amazing to see that, and to your point about how it was misunderstood and came back in that way.
Yeah, and also, it's amazing to me because when Tim and I sat down starting to put it all together, neither of us had any clue how to do a musical. Yeah. And we're like, how do you start? I don't know. Yeah. Let's start with the music. Yeah. And we didn't even have a script at that point, so we just literally sat down going, let's tell as much of the story as we can in songs, and then we'll do the script around that. Of course, it was backwards, but there was no instruction manual and how to create a musical. And so we were both just kind of figuring it out based on what seemed good for us, but it didn't make any sense. And we had nobody supervising us at all. Disney wasn't even aware that we were out there doing it. It was like a side project. And so nobody was looking over our shoulders. There was no producers coming in, making comments about the music. It was just Tim and I, literally, staying up late at night, going over stuff. And and now again in hindsight, I realize what an amazing way to work, because I've not ever worked like that. I haven't done anything since, where it's just like two of us just bashing away at it. And here's a tune. What do you think? Yeah, cool. All right.
Well, that's all what made it ultimately what it was, and even the fact that Disney didn't quite understand it, but has now embraced it. I mean, it's back in theaters every year.
Yeah, I mean, and it's to their credit that they were able to recognize that. Because a lot of studios, if you went to them and said, you know, this movie from 12 years ago, and they'd go, nah, that ship has sailed.
Right, yeah.
Disney has a longer view. And so they do have the ability to go, maybe there's something here we should explore. Yeah. They're looking at kind of the bigger picture. And so I'm very pleased, obviously, that they had the foresight to go, let's put energy into this. And,
and even further than it being a part of our kind of annual, it's a perfect movie because it works for 2 holidays. It's an annual Halloween tradition, but then you can keep it going all the way to Christmas. I'm a Disney parks nerd. I'm sure there's some Disney parks nerds here. To see the Haunted Mansion overlay every year is so cool. But you got to contribute to the Mystic Manor, which is a Disney parks ride in
Hong Kong.
Yeah, Hong Kong.
Yeah, that was really fun because that was inspired by the Haunted Mansion, but it's the Chinese version. And in Chinese culture, ghosts don't occupy the same place. They're not scary. Right. In Western culture, the ghost is you're scared. In Chinese culture, it's ancestors. That's something to be revered. So they came up with another way of doing it through like a kind of wicked spirit, a spirit that gets loose, and got to invent it from the ground up. And it was really fun. But I had these three singing. What are they? Suits of armor, right? And it was my homage to the singing heads, you know, with the little kind of holographic faces on them. I wanted to do an homage to them. So they're singing this, and we cut it in 3 languages, so it cycles through Mandarin, Cantonese, and English. And I went there and we recorded it 3 times, and as they're singing, da, 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 they're switching languages. It was really fun.
So cool. I have a question that I've always wanted to ask you. What are Danny Elfman's Halloween traditions? What do you do on Halloween? Because it feels like you live Halloween all year long. So
yeah, I mean, I know that what's crazy is that for 15, 16 years with Oingo Boingo, we ended up doing Halloween shows out here. And finally, Oingo Boingo retires, and I go, I can actually go trick-or-treating. And for Halloween night, I would go out with my daughters and take them trick-or-treating, and I go, this is such a treat, I don't have to go perform tonight. And then, of course, we start doing first Elfman Burton show, and then Nightmare Before Christmas, of which, for mysterious reasons, we kept getting requests to do them on Halloween. And then right back to doing, all right, I'm doing Halloween shows again every year. Sometimes it's Nightmare Before Christmas, sometimes it's Elfman Burton, sometimes now it's this new show that we're doing called, what is it called? From Batman to Boingo. Big Mess to Batman to Boingo and Beyond, which mashes it all together. And that's what I believe we'll be doing this year. And next Halloween, I believe we're doing Nightmare Before Christmas again.
I imagine going trick-or-treating with your daughter is so weird because half of the costumes are things that you've been involved with. It's really bizarre. It's like the inside of your brain.
It's really fun. I remember my daughter Molly's now surprisingly makes horror films.
Wow.
And but I remember the last time I took her out Halloween, she was already getting like 14, 15. She was starting to get embarrassed by being out with her dad. And I did full Quasimodo makeup, you know, with the eye down on my cheek, and like, you know, crazy blood hair, and I'm being humped back. And I put this giant rope around my neck, and I would say, okay, so I'll lunge at kids and you pull me back.
That's amazing.
She was like, Dad, please don't do that. And I go, look, here's some kids coming, Molly, let's go. I go, Molly, yank the rope. She goes, Dad, you're embarrassing me. And I go, oh boy, it's hopeless. I missed my chance. Now, of course, she would do it in a second, but you know. I did get the trick-or-treat for a while, in between the Boingo Halloween shows and then returning with new whole series of Halloween shows.
Yeah.
So it just seems like I'm always doing some performance somewhere on Halloween or close to Halloween.
Right, absolutely. You know, on the note of Nightmare Before Christmas, it's kind of one of the only kind of true musicals that you've done. One of the, you know, of the many things you've done in your career, one of the few things you haven't done is a stage musical. Is that something that really interests you at all?
I mean, of
writing a musical, a stage
no,
musical.
Yeah, I mean, I've started a few musicals, but none of them have gotten produced yet. So
Yeah.
it's interested me, but I like weird musicals, and so when you're writing something for Broadway, you know, they're looking. I'm not a big fan of Broadway musicals of the last couple of decades, with a few exceptions. You know, it's
Beetlejuice being one. Beetlejuice the musical.
I never saw that.
You never saw it? Wow.
No, they aren't using any Beetlejuice music, so I
Yeah,
just didn't
that's
feel
true.
any desire to see it.
That's true.
I never got called.
Yeah.
And Tim, he was like, what the fuck?
Well, I think that space has opened up a little bit because, of course, David Byrne's musical was so kind of avant-garde and interesting. I mean, the world, I think, would want to see a Danny Elfman stage musical.
So if I get a chance, you know, perhaps I'll return to that, but it'll be weird, and I'll have to find some really odd producers that want to put it on.
Yeah.
So.
I'll ask one more question and then we'll take it to the audience. So if you'd like to ask one, go ahead and line up and we'll get to as many as we can. You know, in kind of reading about your backstory and your bio and your childhood, and that you grew up as kind of a science kid, obsessed with science, and then going into kind of all the traveling that you did with your brother and the street performing, and the kind of live theater, the avant-garde theater troupes into Mystic Nights, and then Oingo Boingo, and then the film scoring. It all feels like it's been a stepping stone and an evolution, and it's all kind of tied together. But it also feels like you're very much an artist who lives in the moment of what they're doing. So now that you've done so much, you know, where do you kind of go from here, I guess?
Oh my God, there's a million places to go.
Yeah.
I mean, because I need challenges all the time. So the last 8 years, you know, I started doing classical work every year. And I managed to do 8 pieces in 8 years.
Yeah.
Just had a piece, 2 pieces released on Sony Classical 2 weeks ago. And I'm working on setting up my next commissions for the next few years. So I do the classical work because it keeps my brain going. But now I'm also doing rock and rolls again.
Yeah.
So I'm starting a new album, I think next month.
Oh man.
So I mean, over the last year, here and there, I've managed to kind of write another 13 songs. So I'm thinking of an album. Maybe I'll call it 13 Songs.
There you go. When you released that 2-disc album around COVID and Happy came out, it captured something we were all feeling that I think we couldn't define, which I think speaks to your career in general, that in Tim's films and your collaborations in all the films that you've done, I think it's made a lot of us who felt othered not feel so othered, and we've connected with it in that way. And yet when you released your album during COVID and you released that video, which was the kind of embodiment of the nightmare, you know, fever dream we were all living in, so it's exciting to hear that you're making more music.
I mean, in that sense, even though, of course, COVID, you know, and the pandemic was horrible for everybody, but for me, it ended up being a stroke of luck because suddenly I found myself with nothing to do for a little while, which had been a long time since I had nothing to do, and I said, I'll just start writing some songs. And 18 songs later, I called my manager, I said, if we don't stop, I'm just gonna keep going. And I said, all right, let's see if we can figure out a way to put this out. So it just was a way for me to occupy my time. But then it opened up this new door that I really enjoy. And I'm just enjoying, you know, played Sick New World last month, and I really had a fun time with that. So, you know, I don't know how much longer I can do that, but for this moment. I'm enjoying it, and I want to keep doing that.
Well, we love that you want to keep doing it. We hope
Thanks.
that too. So, all right, we got a good line here. We're going to try and get to as many of these as we can. So, take it away.
Hey, my name is Robert. How you doing?
Hi.
Hey, so why didn't you compose Spider-Man 3? What happened? You composed Spider-Man 1 and 2, and then you stepped away and Christopher Young came in and composed it. So what happened?
Spider-Man 3.
Yeah, I don't remember. I had, back in those days, I went through a period where I didn't talk with Tim Burton for, a year and a half. We had a falling out, and then Sam and I had this falling out, and then at a certain point I realized that these falling outs are really stupid. It's usually just me throwing some kind of tantrum over something or not understanding. And then fortunately for me, I got realigned with both of them again. So I feel very lucky because, Tim and I, when we started out, we joked, we'll end up like Bernard Herrmann and Alfred Hitchcock. Bernard Herrmann was my idol as a composer, and Alfred Hitchcock, and they did all these famous scores together. And then they had an argument, and they never worked together again. And it was such a shame for me as a fan. So, I had some moments like that where it's like, no, I don't want to work with them anymore. And then a year later, I'd go, I really, really missed him. I miss Sam. I missed him terribly. That was a stupid move. So, you live and you learn. That's all I can say.
Thank you. Hi.
Danny, I'm Carla.
Hi.
Are you dressed as Wednesday Addams?
A little bit.
Appropriate. All right.
Hey, now that you're enjoying getting out there again.
Wait, a little louder. I'm sorry. There's so much sound in here.
Now that you're enjoying getting out there and performing again, how about that Boingo Batman show? Are you going to do more of a tour?
Oh, a tour. Are you
A little bit.
You mean with that show?
Yes.
Well, the problem is that particular show takes 60 musicians on stage. So yes, we've explored taking it out to other places, but it's so difficult because it's combining old songs from Oingo Boingo, new songs that I'm writing now and from Big Mess, and film music. But the film music takes a big crew. So we're exploring how to do that. I mean, obviously sending 60 musicians on tour is just not financially feasible most of the time. So we're trying to figure that out. I didn't think about that when I wrote Big Mess. I knew I was putting orchestra with a rock band, but I didn't think about, how will I ever perform this live?
Well, we'd like to see you here in Dallas. I know you had to cancel recently for DSO. We'd love to have you come back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we'll take a quick question from Spider-Man here. Hey, Spidey, that's appropriate.
Hey there.
Hi.
Hi, so I am not Peter Parker, but anyway, so as you can tell, I am a huge Spider-Man fan.
We can tell, yeah.
Love Spider-Man 1, love Spider-Man 2, also a huge Batman fan, love the songs. I have to ask, when composing those songs, can you walk us through your thought process? Do you work with either Sam Raimi or Tim Burton? Did you watch the film first, then think of the song? Can you just walk us through your brainstorming process, please?
Yeah, I mean, usually I see a rough cut of a film, and in that rough cut, I'll spend some weeks just developing ideas before I play anything for whether it be Sam or Tim. Tim has a unique way of, he always wants to bring me on the set when he's about halfway done shooting. And so in that case of Batman, he flew me out to London. I walked through the Gotham City set, and then I sat with the editor and I looked at about 30 minutes of footage. And literally in the plane on the way home, the whole score started coming into my head. It's like, why here on an airplane? But
You thought of the Batman theme on an airplane?
yeah, I mean, there's a story I like to tell of it started coming into my head while I was on this 747. And because there's somebody sitting next to me, I have a tape recorder, but I'm trying to make a lot of notes for myself, but I'm sitting next to somebody, so I kept running into the bathroom.
Wow.
And after 2 or 3 times getting all these ideas, I'm running into the bathroom, shutting the door, and I come out, the flight attendant's like, "Are you okay, sir?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Actually, I'm really fine. I'm really, really fine." "Okay." And then 10 minutes later, I'm back in again. Now I open the door, there's 2 flight attendants. Can we do anything for you? No, I'm great. And they're going, what can he be doing in there about every 10 to 15 minutes? He can't be doing drugs that frequently. But he's coming out all excited, like, okay, something's going on in there. What's going on in there? I've got my tape recorder, and I'm like, notes and notes and notes and notes, hoping that when I landed, I'd be able to remember when I ran into my studio, decipher all these notes. Fortunately, I did, and remembered, because the whole Batman theme in its entirety came to me on that plane.
Wow.
And I didn't have a keyboard or anything, and I'm not the kind of person who could just pick up a napkin and just start writing without some kind of instrument, a guitar, a piano. I need some instrument to write music. And anyhow, that's the story of Batman and those movies. You know, same thing with Sam. I'd go on, I'd look at a rough cut, I came up with a bunch of ideas, and then there's you play stuff, it goes up and back and up and back, and you take notes. And with Sam, he liked the original Spider-Man theme, but it needed something to hurt. So he says, I need more heart. And then I remembered, I wrote this piece of music for his Uncle Ben when he died. And I suddenly pulled that into the main theme. That was at the end of the Spider-Man title theme. The French horns come in and they play this melody. And that finally put it over the top for Sam. He says, yeah, that's what I was looking for. Wow. So, you wrestle around with it a bit.
And sometimes it's a happy accident, like sometimes Batman or the theme for The Simpsons.
On a 747,
yeah. Which, if you don't know, amongst the many things that Danny's done, he also composed the theme for The Simpsons, which is something we could spin in the time.
I wrote in a car driving home from.
So
that came to my head in the car.
You've done Batman in a plane. You did The Simpsons in a car. So you at some point you have to write something on a train.
Yeah, The Simpsons. Literally, I came home from my meeting with Matt Groening, and the whole thing was in my head as I was driving home. And I just got home and I ran downstairs. I wouldn't even say hello to anybody. And I just by the end of that afternoon, I had the whole thing. But that's a lucky break.
Yeah.
That doesn't usually happen that way. Like boom, like that. Usually it's a struggle. But occasionally they just happen. And The Simpsons was definitely that way.
Well, we sadly are out of time. We have time for one more question, and I understand we actually have a special question from the back. Do we have a special?
Yes. Well, Danny, what is the youngest recorded age of a child who can sing the entire score to The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Wait, what was the
youngest recorded age of a child who can sing the entire score?
What's the youngest recorded age of a child that can sing the entire score to Nightmare Before Christmas? This voice sounds oddly familiar. Who's asking this question?
I happen to know the answer. My grandson, Danny.
He's over there.
Where is he? Oh, there you are.
This is a special treat. This is, of course, Danny's first convention, and we just happen to have Chris here as a guest too. So right now in front of you, you have both Jack Skellingtons on stage.
True story, by the way, Danny, that my grandson, who, and by the way, I have 9 grandchildren, and they're all completely captivated by your music to the movie. And I'm going to do this. I've been waiting to do this for a long time.
He went Wayne's World on him. Chris Sarandon! And ladies and gentlemen of Fin Expo, we have just a few more minutes, so we'll try and take one more question here. Take it away.
Hi, my name's Hephaestus, and first of all, I've always wanted to say this, I love your tattoos. They're incredible.
Yeah, your tattoos.
Yeah. My question was, out of you have like a very expansive like category of like scores and music just in general. And my question was, out of all of them and all the songs you've ever made for Oingo Boingo, what was the most fun for you to make personally?
Out of his scores or Oingo Boingo?
All of them.
All of anything.
That's such a hard question. You know, it's like certain things you remember because they're painful and you struggle and you come through it. You remember it becomes a favorite, and certain things you remember because it's so painless. Like for example, when I wrote Dead Man's Party, I got a new little drum machine, like a drum machine that I was messing around with. My daughter Lola came in and said, "What's that, Daddy?" And I go, "Look, it's this," and I just showed her how it worked, and I came up with this rhythm. And it was the rhythm, it's actually what's on the record for Dead Man's Party.
Oh my
this
gosh.
kind of starts out with this kind of drum machine-y kind of thing, and all dressed up with no go, and there it was. So, that was a kind of a fun moment because I wasn't even trying to write a song. I was just trying to demonstrate a gadget for my daughter. And for a movie, I think the most fun was writing the 10 songs for Nightmare, because it was so just Tim and I for a month working together, and I basically wrote one song every 3 days, which was crazy fast. But he would just tell me the story. I said, "Just tell me the story like you're telling it to a kid at bedtime." And he'd go, "Well, Jack is wandering in the forest and he comes to the trees, and like the one tree, and the door opens up and he's sucked down, and it's snow, and he doesn't know what it is. And as he's describing it, I'm hearing, what's this? What's this? There's color everywhere." And I'm going, "Okay, that's enough, Tim. Get out of here. Get out of here." And I would call him a couple days later and say, "I got something." He'd come back and I'd play him, "What's this?" And he'd go, "Oh, okay, fine." And now, and he'd just go each section of the movie as he saw it. So that was particularly fun because I doubt whether I will ever have that simple of an experience again. So that's way up there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I see the next person in line. I can't cut it off and crush a little girl's dreams. And it's perfectly appropriate, if you can't see, that we're ending our last question on a little Sally here. So, hi, what's your name?
Hi.
What's your name?
My name's Alelia.
What's your question?
Well, before my question is, I really liked how you made the show, and it was really good when I used to saw it. I really liked it, which was good. But my question is, how many shows, how hard did you work on all those shows you made?
How hard? How hard has he worked on all the movies he's done scores for?
Yeah.
She wants to know about your work ethic, Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Rick. That's a really good question. The fact is, most movies are really hard to work with. When I talk with young film composers, people that are trying to get going in the industry, I tell them, you'd better have a strong masochistic streak. Masochistic means a high tolerance for pain.
You learned something today.
Yeah, some movies are just real easy and go down easy, but most aren't. Most are very, very difficult. And in the end, when the composer, we are the caboose of a long train. So that train might start 1, 2, 3, 4 years earlier, and we're the last person on board to do the music at the end. By the time we come on, things are pretty hysterical. They often start with real clear vision of what it is. By the end, there's often a sense of, what is this? And the composers, can you fix this? Can you fix that? We have this problem here. And it's like, oh my God. So it's a difficult process. It's not an easy profession, except for those few times when it is. And those, we try to remember those ones. It's like remembering the ones that just went down so easy. You don't want to remember the ones that felt like it was going to kill you.
Did I answer your question?
Thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Work hard.
Time with your children.
She said, have a good time with your children.
Thank you.
Perfect words to park by. Have a good time, all of you.
Thank you so very much for having me here today. I really appreciate it.
I just want to say thank you for, we feel really,